From the Zimmer Network quarters, it's your morning edition. Wake Up Missouri with Stephanie Bell, the Zimmer News Team. And now introducing your host, Randy Tobler.
I've not concluded anything. I've not given you a conclusion. But what I do know, is this individual was on that scene several minutes before that shooting, interfering with a lawful, legal, ethical law enforcement operation to arrest Jose Huerta Chuma. And again, it's back to choices. We just talked about choices. When someone makes the choice to come into an active law enforcement scene, interfere, obstruct, delay, or assault law enforcement officers, and they bring a weapon to do that, that is a choice that individual made.
Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino holding forth in a press conference in the battle of Border Patrol, ICE versus leadership in Minnesota. That was the story of the weekend, in addition to Snowmageddon. And we find out, Stephanie, that snowstorms have names. I didn't know that.
Winter Storm Fern.
This is Winter Storm Fern. Okay. Welcome into Wake Up Missouri.
Was not very nice to us.
Fern was. There's no weather for growing ferns this weekend. All of the fern spores are probably and seeds are probably chilled to their very core and
freeze dried.
Yeah. John Marsh, there you got your everything good. Your house, the heater working, John. Stephanie?
Yep.
Everything good?
Yep. Not an issue. Had about 6 inches at our house.
Yeah.
Weather-wise.
What did Columbia get? I think in the Columbia area, probably around 6 to 7 inches. Springfield, I think, a little bit more. They were
Springfield, Don said 6.7 inches in Springfield, 10 in Branson.
Wow.
And I heard from friends over in Freeburg in Osage County, they got 8+.
Wow. I'm thinking of Don, as cold as it's going to be. We reached minus 10 as I was getting into the car this morning, roughly, minus 10, minus 9, minus 10. And that means the snow on the mini golf courses, the mini, golf that he does, will not melt for quite a while. It'll be quite a while before that melts at these temperatures.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the 10-day forecast, and I don't think we really get much time above freezing. Wednesday, we're supposed to get to 33, but it'll be next Monday before we're into the 40s.
And pipes breaking everywhere. I know in our building there was a leak apparently, and a little pipe burst. And Stephanie,
I had a family member who, in Kansas City,
retailer
was impacted by a pipe.
What are you hearing from your sister, Steph? Isn't she out there in the heart of the ice country?
Oh, she's terrified. Yesterday I got a video of her, and she said every time she hears a big crack, she runs to the window and hopes it's not a tree coming through, landing on top of her car or coming through her roof. She sent me a picture of a friend who had a tree sticking into one of their bedrooms, like through the roof, through the drywall.
It's amazing.
There's I think several 100,000 people without power. Luckily, she as of last night, she still had power. But hundreds of thousands of people out of power. And then, we're in her neighborhood, at least they've got a lot of above ground power lines, and those snapping trees were just taking them down one after another. She had live power lines in her road. And the ice is, I guess we can be thankful for that this morning, that I think for the most part, Missouri avoided the ice. But D.C.'s closed today. I mean, they were getting a lot of sleet and nasty stuff. So I think the government office buildings are closed. I mean, to have a storm, John, that extends from southern Missouri to the East Coast is pretty wild.
And,
especially in the Deep South, got a family member who's a foreman on a mid-Missouri electrical crew, and they are headed out already.
It's, thank God for the linemen and women across the nation who are doing their best to try to restore power. I heard that there were 237,000 people out of power in Tennessee alone at one point. So pretty dramatic.
I will say Highway 63 isn't looking too bad. I mean, props to MoDOT.
Yeah, bravo for the MoDOT people.
It's looking a lot better than I expected.
I think their sunshine helped them a bunch as they spent their time cleaning off the roads yesterday. So they're working on it for sure.
It was so nice yesterday. It warmed up a little bit, got up to about, 18, 19. And Helene and I were out.
Low 20s.
We developed a nice method for shoveling the snow because it was pushable snow. You'd have to do a lot of lifting. I mean, you could lift at the end of each long run of push, and then she would clean up what was left that fell off the side. Man, we knocked it out in about an hour and 15, and got it done. She said, "Why aren't you following your own advice?" I said, "I am following my own advice. I shovel a little while, take a little break, check the pulse, make sure everything's good, and follow." Yeah. A lot of people telling me they're getting this. This was good snowblower weather. If you got a snowblower, this is good. When the wet, sloppy stuff comes down, not so much, I don't think, but this was good. Well, in other news, Drake is going to be thrilled because his Rams are not going to be in the Super Bowl, right?
His Rams? Whoa, 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 whoa.
Well, they're your Rams because you love to hate them, in a way. You sort of adopt them as your story, losers, right? So,
yeah, they might be the one team that I hate more than the Chiefs. They might just be.
But they were good. I mean, they put up a valiant fight there at the end, but a good defensive play.
I hate them more for it because it's like, I can hate the Chiefs, the Patriots, and anyone else, but they play a fun brand of football, and they're a successful team, and I'm jealous. Yeah. I'm jealous that they couldn't do that here in St. Louis.
And the Patriots, boy, you watch the first half of the Patriots-Bills game, and it's dry as can be, and by the middle of the beginning to middle of the fourth quarter, all of a sudden it looks like it's been snowing for a week. It's unbelievable. A blizzard blew in. And that was a close game. I mean, I guess that made it more interesting than it otherwise would have been because of the snow, but low-scoring game.
This is so ridiculous. The Patriots are going to the Super Bowl. It took them 4 years to rebuild, and I just don't have anything to say.
Can we just close the door on the football season and talk about that Mizzou basketball game?
Because
that was insane. It was insane. My family group chat was blowing up. They were like, oh my gosh, whoa. And then 2 times in a row, buzzer beaters. Like the first one was from not quite half court, but definitely the logo to send us into overtime.
Past midcourt, gives it up. Pierce from the logo. Got it! Pierce at the buzzer sends us to overtime.
Up a foul, and watch Trent Pierce line it up right on the money.
First field goal of the game for Pierce. 5 minutes of overtime on the other side of this break. 0.8 left. Here's Mitchell across midcourt for Mizzou for the win. Yes! Mitchell at the buzzer.
You have to wonder, what the discussion in the locker room with Gates is afterwards, because we didn't really earn that, right? We got real lucky twice, and you have to wonder. I mean, a win is a win, but at the same time, he's like, "Come on, guys, can't we do that a little earlier and secure the win?"
Those were long threes, too.
Yeah,
it was really something else.
Next is Crimson Tide, and I think, Drake, they're top 20 right now, aren't they?
That sounds right. I know Alabama, they learned how to read. They're 17 in the nation.
And that's tomorrow night, right?
Yep.
What does it tell you when a team can be so hot and then just fall flat and then just excel? I mean, does that mean that they're a team in progress towards some serious, sustained greatness? Or does it just mean they're a team that gets hot and gets cold?
I don't know that they got cold. They had a close loss, last week? But
they had a couple of stinker losses.
They started pretty cold, but they're heating up, I think.
No, but then remember they won a couple big ones in a row. Last year's first place team, and then they lost miserably. I mean, it's just wild how they can go from such mountaintop moment to the valley. It's weird.
Yeah, we beat teams that we shouldn't, and we lose to teams that we shouldn't as well. It's ridiculous.
Isn't that odd? Is that a psychological thing, or is it just, I don't know, strange. Anyway, good. That was exciting. That was seriously exciting.
You can't win them all, Randy.
Well, but
unless you're what? Who just won the?
You're trying to teach us that you need to win them all. That's what you've taught us.
Indiana.
Yeah.
Right? Indiana went undefeated.
Look at me and my sports knowledge. Yay.
Very good.
And the people in Minnesota are behaving crazily. This is a little bit of a, it's a little bit difficult to hear, but I found this. This is a woman who filled up 2 carts at Target. And then at I think it was roughly, I don't know, some predetermined time on Friday afternoon or Thursday, they had remember that the plea was to do a shop out, close down all the stores, don't go shopping, shut the city down. Listen to this. This gal, so she's standing here with 2 carts in front of the checkout line, or maybe it's the service area. And this is it. She's she steps up there.
No, because we're not actually going to buy all of this. We just loaded up our carts. We're shop administration. Yes. Attention, Target shoppers. 2:00 now. We're going to walk out as part of the Free America walkout. We walk away from fascism. We walk towards a free America. We fight for a future that belongs to all of us. Everybody in, nobody out.
So she says we're not going to buy this. And then that means the workers have to restock all the shelves. And there are a bunch of little things. It's a bottle of this and a jar of that and a hair comb. And I mean, it's just little stuff. She sends her and reads some kind of a resistance manifesto. What kind of idiot people are up there?
We need to throw her manifesto into ChatGPT and revise it. Attention, I'm about to commit a crime. I am a thief. I'm stealing a bunch of worthless crap.
Well, no, she wasn't going to steal it. They filled it up and then they leave it there and they're walking out. I mean, it's such a silly stunt. It's so sophomoric. It's unbelievable.
And it's like, who are you punishing?
Has the cold gotten to them, you think? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're suffering from hypothermia.
Could be. It's like 13 below in the Twin Cities right now.
I don't know. For the rest of us who are trapped inside with kiddos for 48 hours, I think everyone's a little bit on edge and going crazy. So I think you're right. Maybe it's the cold.
If this is what the cold does to you, I'm moving to Florida. I'm sorry.
You and everybody else.
I wouldn't want to be transformed to that. They're terrible. And then the nurse. I feel sorry for this guy, this nurse. He became involved in the resistance. He got involved in an altercation. Apparently, ICE was having a little problem with someone. I guess it was a woman that they pushed down. You see these stories, and without any context, these look bad when you see them pushing people down. That's the first thing that the legacy media plays.
This is 37-year-old Alex Preddy.
Yeah, and he's an ICU nurse at the VA. Now, isn't that ironic? He's at the VA. What would veterans say about this that fought for people's rights to peacefully assemble? Some of them died. Some lost limbs. Some had permanent PTSD and other physical problems as well. For that kind of behavior, did they fight for behavior that ends up, because of choices that people make, getting themselves killed? Sad that they get wrapped up in these things. We'll be talking about that and some of the close-up on the videos as we move along. Daily DC Rundown coming up with Stephanie. Later on, Cindy O'Loughlin and Larry Behrens.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
are you guys giving out?
Donuts, hot chocolate.
And you're with the Minnesota National Guard?
Yeah, we are. Yes, we are.
Why was this important for you guys to do today?
This is a demonstration of safety and security. We're here to help.
Awesome. Thank you.
Minnesota National Guardsmen with donuts and hot chocolate for the rioters.
For the protesters, yeah. That is...
Finally, they come out.
There's a lot of things that would be on the top of my list if I was in charge and had spare people. That passing out donuts and hot chocolate wouldn't be one of them. Keeping people safe, yes. Of course, we are talking this morning about the shooting of a 37-year-old Alex Preddy. That has set off even more. I mean, it was already a tinderbox, Randy, and now it's worse. Now, I don't think I fully understand exactly what happens. There's lots of investigations going on. It appears DHS has taken over the investigation, which the state is really mad about. But, there's videos circulating online. The timing, the sequence is really weird. So there's videos circulating online. The Democrats are saying the guy just had a cell phone. Trump obviously posted a picture. He did have a gun. Apparently he had a concealed carry permit. Mm-hmm. He had magazines on him. And so I think we're going to learn more, this week about exactly the timing and the nature of, there was like a scuffle. If you haven't watched the video, it's still, I think, unclear as well who fired the shots. I mean, they came from ICE agents, but which ICE agents, I think, is still being investigated. All right. We're also talking about Trump versus Canada. Let's see. Carney was over in Davos, and he said he criticized great powers using tariffs as leverage and called on middle powers to stick together. Trump's threatening a 100% tariff on all Canadian goods if Canada makes this trade deal with China. Carney denies pursuing an open trade agreement with China, and Trump, is not pleased about the conversations and the remarks at Davos.
Right.
We are also headed toward a big funding fight as no one is working in D.C. The shutdown, apparently, according to insiders, is now at about 90% odds.
And Schumer says he's not voting for DHS funding. He's not voting for a bill with that in it.
That's right. So last week we thought, hey, we're going to finally get moving, and it looks like smooth sailing. The House passed the DHS funding bill. It was headed to the Senate. The Democrats now, over this Minnesota shooting, are threatening to block the entire government funding package. And Schumer says, yes, he wants to fund everything except for DHS. There's one problem with that, in that the House is out this week, and the House would need to come in and re-vote on that. So we will see what happens, but it's not looking good. And, of course, that shutdown deadline is the 30th, which is Friday. So we'll continue to monitor that. We are also monitoring Winter Storm Fern, which sounds quite kind and nice, but it was not a very nice storm. We had historic flight disruptions, the most cancellations since during the COVID pandemic. We've also got about almost 900,000 people without power. A lot of that over, I guess, if you look at all of Tennessee, over 500,000 people in Tennessee. Mississippi, Louisiana, the South really got pummeled with those ice storms. So not great. But here we avoided the ice.
Yeah, that was good. And great job by the highway department and local and state officials to do a great job.
For sure. We are also hearing we are sending an armada towards Iran as the death toll tops 5,000. Iran, of course, is warning that Israel and U.S. bases could be targeted in retaliatory measures. We also might get more word this week about the Trump accounts. The Treasury Department's going to hold a summit about these 1,000 deposits for new babies.
Yeah, there's going to be that's going to be a real, as these things roll out, I think that's going to be some nice buffer against all of the rhetoric coming out of Minneapolis and other places. It's amazing what's going on. Well, did you hear about the ICE agent that needs a plastic surgeon that does hand work?
We're going to go there.
We'll talk about that when we come back on Wake Up Missouri. Larry Barron's at 7:35. Energy.
Has America been fair to
Kristi Noem was on with Peter Ducey the other day in the wake of this shooting of this 37-year-old ICU nurse who, according to one of his neighbors, was a very kind, gentle-hearted guy. That's okay. I've known people that are kind and gentle-hearted to other people, but they make a bad decision and do something that they shouldn't have done. They get in trouble. That happens. But she was highlighting how something happened that was pretty disturbing, and I think it may have there may be a medical. We keep trying to understand how is it that people in Minnesota can behave the way they are. I don't know. I heard this and I thought, well, maybe there's something. It just seems that there is no end to what these people will do. Let's just put it that way, and they're just crazy.
Agitators anymore. They're violent protests. In fact, the state and the city of Minneapolis abandoned this area in downtown Minneapolis because they couldn't control the situation by the amount of people that have come in just trying to disrupt and impede law enforcement operations.
So there you go. And if you've seen the picture, it's the guy's right hand, and it's between the very furthermost joint and the tip of the finger. It looks like he lost about maybe 3/4 of an inch of a finger. Maybe a little less, half an inch. And, you think about that. That's a pretty big deal. You lose the tip of your finger. Many of you may have had injuries, maybe, vocationally. I've, seen that. We know people. It changes your life. It changes the way you do things. And not one peep about the ICE officers who have been pummeled with frozen water bottles and others. And yet Tim Walz has a different spin on things.
Local media has reported extensively on the cooperation to de-escalate this situation. Donald Trump, I call on you once again. Remove this force from Minnesota.
Okay, well, sorry. Oh, so that
there we go,
that
Randy.
Didn't play. Oh, I was trying to play sound. Oh, I'm going to play it here. I'm going to play Kristi Noem again. Sorry. Here we go. Well, it's cold outside. Maybe I've got a little hypothermia. Here's Kristi Noem.
Officer had his finger bitten clean off by an agitator yesterday. There are some pretty troubling photos of that online if anybody wants to look. Have you heard from any of the Democratic leadership in Minnesota about that? Tim Walz, Jacob Frey.
No, they haven't expressed any concern for injuries to our.
So the cold weather not only gives you Trump derangement syndrome, but it also makes you a cannibal. Is that?
I think there may. Well, I think there may be. Cannibal is
Minnesota
one
and our local law enforcement, as you have seen, have done everything possible to de-escalate. Local media has reported extensively on the cooperation to de-escalate this situation.
I haven't seen any local law enforcement authorities up there. In fact, the chief, Brian O'Hara, has different things. But then I got to thinking, rabies. It's rabies. Rabies includes fever, headache, agitation, hallucinations. I'm just saying. I think I've solved the problem. I've explained it. There's a lot of wild animals. Don't they call them the Minnesota Gophers after all? Huh? Gophers probably carry rabies.
I'm sure they do, Randy. I bet they're all infested with rabies.
Well, they're acting like it. They're agitated. They're hallucinating, thinking that these people are Gestapo agents. I mean, they're seeing in their mind's eye.
I did see a couple of them in some of the videos you put on our show sheet that their mouths were foaming.
Have you seen any excessive salivation? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's funny on the one hand because they are lunatics, and on the other hand, it's sad. I mean, this guy got wrapped up in something. I guess he's going to I guess people would say he was coming to the rescue of this damsel in distress, potentially.
The number of bad choices you have to on both parts to bite someone's finger off.
Yeah, what in the world are you thinking?
How's your finger that close to someone's mouth?
Yeah, well, I'm sure this was one of those trying to.
I'm not blaming the ICE
wrestle.
agent, but at the same time, it's like, what a weird. I mean, ugh.
Yeah, but can you imagine?
And then what possesses you to bite through human flesh? What?
But have you seen how many officers it takes to subdue some of these wild, crazy people? I mean, they're just out of control. And when the adrenaline's surging, people have tremendous amounts of energy and just kinetic activity going on. So. Well, speaking of energy and kinetic activity, there'll be, I guess, less of that when the Attorney General wants to appeal something in Missouri, right, Stephanie?
Or when the Secretary of State wants to rewrite a ballot title. Yes, the Senate passed a bill last year that gave the Secretary, I call it 3 bites at the apple. So it used to be when he would write a ballot title, the court would say it was insufficient or unfair. Then the court would automatically rewrite the ballot title. Now, we've seen this in the abortion measure, some of the other measures. He gets like a do-over, and he gets 3 tries to rewrite it.
And then the judge does it if he's still not happy.
It depends. If it goes up on appeal on like round 2, then the court rewrites it. But anyway, so this takes that away. So what happened was they put that in a bill, and the bill also included a provision that would allow the Attorney General to appeal cases in certain circumstances. Late last week, the Supreme Court found that the bill, that provision, essentially, they made procedural arguments. I think they found that it violated the original purpose clause.
Yeah, the one purpose deal, right? The bill can only have one thing in it.
Yeah, a bill can't change from its original purpose. Yeah. And so then the court, after they find a procedural challenge, they engage in what's called a severability analysis. We're getting a little bit nerdy, but the question kind of is the offending provision something that they can pull out and save the rest of the legislation, or is it too difficult in this case to determine whether the legislature would have passed the bill without the offending provision? And so so the court found that the offending provision wasn't severable, which means the whole bill falls.
So the way I think about this is when you have a contract, usually near the end of a contract, it'll say that there's something about severability, that, hey, if one of the articles in this contract is found to be invalid or something, we're not going to. The rest of it still applies.
Yeah, and you can imagine an employment contract that says I'm going to show up to work 40 hours a week, and the court strikes the part where you get paid, and you'd be like, hey, that's not the deal I negotiated, right? I'm not going to show up if I don't get paid. So I think. Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal because obviously we've talked a lot. I mean, initiative petitions are hot. We might be voting on 4 or 5.
So what's it mean for this election then?
Coming
up in,
so the AG loses its special appeal rights, and that affects things even outside of the initiative petition context. There's some pending cases right now, and I think what they're saying is that the abortion measure where Hoskins was allowed to rewrite, now I think they will argue, and I think it's the same lawyers, and it is the same lawyers in both cases. I think they'll probably argue that, well, we already determined that he needed to rewrite. Now, court, you have to rewrite. I believe that the case on the abortion ballot language is before Judge Stumpy in Cole County.
So they'll motion that the rewrite it doesn't apply. The judge needs to do it.
I think that's what they'll argue.
Yeah.
I'm not in that case, so
Free
I don't
legal
know if they're
advice for
already
those
arguing
attorneys.
that. No, there is no legal advice on this show. I am not your lawyer.
I know.
But yeah,
it.
and I mean, the question is, I think the other question is, will the legislature take this up again, right? Because oftentimes when you see the court strike this down, the legislature could come in and pass something similar. They can throw an emergency clause on something, which would, depending on. I'm trying to think that through. Anyway, they could take another shot at passing this legislation again, and without similar issues.
Yeah, just pass 2 separate pieces if that's what they want to do. Yeah. Question is, will they have to go the previous question route, right? Where they go basically bust the filibuster.
And with the Senate Bill 22 wasn't one of the ones that they called the PQ on. I don't think.
Still, if they want to pass things, we're going to ask Cindy O'Loughlin at 8:08 whether or not she anticipates that there's going to be, when already the Democrats drew a line in the sand and threw a fit and pouted over the governor's appointees, just showing what they can do, So if that's going to be a marker for what their behavior is going to be the rest of the way, it'll be very interesting to see.
I mean, we knew they were going to do something, and there's not a lot of business gets done in January anyway. The question is, what do they want, right?
We haven't heard her weigh in on the governor's speech, the very firm mandate to get our fiscal house in order. But then when we talk with Elias Tsefelis from Show Me Institute, he said, well, they still got an increase in the budget, right, this year. So I think he said they were going to cut it by $600 million every year and get to where we don't hit that fiscal cliff. So we're going to ask her if she's going to chip into that spending palooza that's been going on for a while. And we'll talk with her about that at 8:08. As well as what does she and the governor have up their sleeves, maybe, and the legislator and the governor, to help tamp down energy inflation. It's a big deal. I mean, energy is like clothing and food. You have to have it, right? To drive, to get to work, to heat your house.
Ask the 800,000 people without power in the South right now. It's tough.
But even when you have it, it costs. I mean, every time I turn on a heater, I turn up by 1 degree because I want to keep the outside pipes that are against the outside of the house. I want to, I'm opening up the cabinets and, hoping everything's not. I'm like, oh, can I really do this? Or should I just, what should I do? Go in every hour with a hairdryer and go, I don't.
Mine had the hairdryer out yesterday. My kiddos trying to dry their snow clothes in between trips outside.
Yeah.
Well, and Ameren put out the call, and I think Columbia Water and Light did too, to cut back on your electric usage, kind of thing that we generally hear during a heat wave in the dead of summer. They were wanting everybody to conserve electricity.
And we're going to talk with Larry about that, because you got to wonder, haven't they raised their rates twice in a couple of years?
Yep.
And all this, I mean, they do a lot of advertising about how good they are to us and how wonderful they are.
They got the legislation passed that allows them to build future power plants and charge you for the privilege of it before they're online.
Pay you ahead of time, yeah. We get to pay the bill ahead of time, and yet they can't provide enough energy. Oh, they're too busy building solar farms and windmills, for crying out loud.
Well,
more hamsters.
They'd build a few more nuclear power plants. A third of the power in Tennessee, I heard on the news, is nuclear.
Yeah, TVA.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I know President Pro Tem O'Loughlin has proposals out there about solar.
Yes.
So I'm sure she's ready to.
Oh, yeah.
If you've looked at her Facebook.
Undo the solar and do the nuclear. It's pretty simple. Well, you don't have to go out and shovel snow for 2 hours or go to the gym every day for an hour and a half to get some benefit. In this case, some interesting news about cancer prevention and anti-cancer activity with just a brief burst of exercise. We'll talk about that on Make Missouri Healthy again when we come back.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
explains the what or the why behind the what when it comes to the kind of healthy lifestyle practices that we all know, but sometimes it's just hard to get into the habit and into the daily routine, or at least the several time a week routine of doing something that we know is good for us. So one of those things is exercise, because exercise is good for your muscles, it's good for your circulation, it's good for your breathing. I mean, it's just good all around, right? Well, why don't we do it more? Well, I think it's because we generally feel okay. We're not at the moment when we need to make that decision sick or impending sick, or thinking about if you're young and healthy and full of vim and vigor like Drake and Stephanie and, it's up the road. People get sick when, well, what about this study? 30 volunteers, 50 to 78, all overweight or obese, which is a risk factor for cancer, were given an intense cycling test that lasted about 10 minutes. So they got on their bike. They collected blood samples afterwards and analyzed about 250 proteins, and as many as 13 proteins increased after exercise, including one called interleukin 6. Never mind all of that, but both proteins that increased the way cells use oxygen, proteins that slow down the rate of cell growth. What is cancer? It's unbridled cell growth, right? Cells just grow and proliferate and just out of control. They're just build up and build up. That's cancer. And so proteins that on the one hand sort of inhibited excessive cell growth, on the other hand, this interleukin 6 is a really important protein that helps repair the DNA of cells. What do cancers derive from? It's from mutations in DNA. So you can see how on many fronts they found on this very elegant biological, basic, biochemical level, how cool it is that just a burst of exercise, 10 minutes of exercise, at least theoretically would reduce your risk of cancer. Now, we can't say that 1,000 obese people doing 10 minutes of brisk biking 5 times a week is going to, you'd have to follow them for 10, 15 years and see if they got cancer or not. But wouldn't you want healthier proteins floating through your bloodstream rather than less healthy proteins? I would.
Let's do it. You're making the case for my under-the-desk cycling thing that I need here at the station.
And, we've been doing body composition.
Doing jumping jacks in the middle of the show.
We've been doing body composition analysis on our patients with a cool new machine we have, and it's really cool. We're finding that even guys, particularly guys, tend to accumulate more fat around their organs than women do. It's because of the hormonal difference.
Do you have eyes? Because, dudes have beer bellies.
And that's but not only the fat that you see beneath the skin in that so-called beer belly, but it actually is sort of a proxy, not always, for what's inside, but pretty close. And it turns out that fat tends to be the kind that is really more prone to causing a lot of damage. So, you think about guys tend to have heart disease earlier than women and strokes and cardiovascular disease. And it seems as though, while aerobic exercise tends to be pretty fat burning, the high intensity interval training where, you just go like gangbusters for a while, then
10 minutes of burpees.
And then, then just settle down. That kind of up and down kind of a workout may actually more efficiently target some of that kind of fat. So, look, any exercise is better than none at all. And if you're struggling with knee problems or hip problems and you can't, get in a pool, jump in a pool, do some floor exercises. You can find something to do. That's very important to keep you healthy and keep all of Missouri healthy with just a little burst of exercise every day. 10 minutes, say it's a good start. All right, when we come back, there's a guy who has some very good advice for those protesters in Minnesota.
California, law enforcement doesn't assault anyone. Follow directions of law enforcement. Follow directions of law enforcement in an active crime scene. It's very evident he didn't want to do that. Very evident that the other individuals didn't want to do that. And, it's too bad the consequences had to be paid because he injected himself into that crime scene. I can't say that enough. He made the decision to go there. We didn't make the decision to talk to him. We didn't even know that individual was in existence until he came into that crime scene.
I want to go back.
This was Greg Bovino versus Dana Bash. Might as well have been Todd Blanche versus Margaret Brennan or whoever he was. Kristen Welker. I mean, and these journalists are they've been bitten by the same rabid TDS dog. There must be a TDS dog carrying rabies that are biting all of these people. What is it they don't understand? Yes, it's a shame that this guy got killed, this Alex Pretty. It's a darn shame that he got killed. But it's also a darn shame that people are enabling, validating, endorsing. What other word would be proper? Wordsmith, Stephanie Bell. This kind of behavior. You don't hear the Walls and the Frys and now the Klobuchars and the Ellisons of the world saying, guys, look, we've got avenues to address if you think ICE is overacting. They've said it, get your phone out, but that's where they stop. They don't say that's where you should stop, ladies and gentlemen. Get your phone out, take pictures, stop there. You don't hear that next stop there.
You don't hear any de-escalation techniques at all.
No.
You hear them raising the temperature rather than trying to lower it. And I think regardless of where you are on the ICE issue, I hope that we could all agree that we need to lower the temperature in Minnesota.
And then
we're going to see more of what we have been seeing. And raising the temperature is not going to fix the situation. If you're on the left and you see what's happening and you say this shouldn't happen, okay, then help us, help you, and let's lower the temperature.
I don't like seeing a woman dragged out of a car. If that's all I saw, I would go, holy cow, as much as I'm a law enforcement officer champion, wow, what are they doing? Well, then you see the whole film, and how many times have we seen this? A woman's driving a car, bashing an ICE car, backing up, officers running out of the way. They tell her to stop. She doesn't, and they finally drag her out of the car. The rest of the story is never told by the mainstream media. They're not doing that.
Like the 5-year-old little boy who they were detaining, who was being cared for by the ICE agent because illegal dad went on the run.
And then this from this guy. Apparently he's a TikToker. I don't know. It's like the Caesar Life show. I might become a fan of this guy. I saw this. It's a little long, but I want you to hear it because you listen to this guy and you go, oh, that everyone in Minnesota and especially in Minneapolis, maybe in pockets of L.A., maybe in pockets of Springfield or Columbia or even Jefferson City, St. Louis, Kansas City, wherever you're listening, this guy has the wise words. Here they are. Now, wait a minute. I got the right buttons pushed. Here we go.
Hey, yo, America. Understand this. I'm a black man in America, right? I walk around with a 19 on my hip, a SIG in my glove compartment, and an AR-15 in my 2020 Honda Accord. Daily, right?
This guy's got dreadlocks, and he's got a hoodie on, and he's sitting in it, he's just looking at the camera.
And you know what I don't do with those things? I don't go and impede law enforcement carrying out their duties. You know what I do? I mind my business. That's all I do. I go out there, I drink water, I get money, and I mind my business. You know my favorite saying, right? And for some reason, I'm able to survive. Every single day I'm able to come home, run my kids a bath, tuck them in, and continue to do my thing. No harm comes to me, no harm comes to my family. I also have a 12-gauge pump, away from the kids, of course, because, you got to be a responsible pew-pew owner, okay? And no harm comes to me and my family because I mind my business. I let the law do the law things. If I have beef, I petition my lawmakers. I don't go and take it out on law enforcement who are also citizens and Americans like me. And for some reason, I'm still here. There's a lesson in that.
Has anyone said it more clearly? Has anyone said it more clearly? I got my guns. And somehow I survive. How is that? Because I mind my business.
And when I have a problem, I petition my lawmakers, and I don't take it out on other people who are trying to put food on their own table by just doing their job. Doing what they are ordered to do.
I come to think about, so whenever there's anyone in a first responder type of a role or a law enforcement role and they're skilled and they're trained and they're doing their job, I see this as a doc. Okay, I'm driving down the road and I see a wreck on the side of the road. My first instinct is to pull aside. My second instinct is to see, is there EMS on scene or on the way? And if I see flashing lights in an ambulance, I tend not to stop because those people are more equipped. They have the resources. They have what they need. They have the skill. They have the training. I'm only going to get in the way. Now, that's not a law enforcement deal, but that's a guy thinking, hey, there are people that are experts and trained and focused on the incident. I'm only going to get in the way. Or in the case of Mr. Preddy or the woman, Renee Nichols, what was her name? Renee Good. I'm not only going to get in the way, but I might get hurt. I might get killed.
Yeah, that's a big concern right there. I mean, it's one thing to help. It's another thing to hinder or the perception of hindering what the first responders are trying to do.
Right.
So what you're saying is you mind your business. Your own business.
The way he says it at the end, he's looking around. He's got this hoodie, and it's just him and the thing. He looks around, and for some crazy reason, he looks around. I'm still here. It's just, and he's so right. If I have a problem, I will petition my legislators. I'll petition those who can change the law I'm unhappy about. It just makes so much common sense. And so you don't want to anyone who says that Mr. Preddy should not have been involved with trying to do what, you could even argue that this guy saw this woman pushed down by ICE and he wanted to help and whatever. He's just he's a nurse. He wanted to say, sorry, you're a nurse and you're in the ICU. You probably have seen people put in a central line, a line that goes into the subclavian vein below your clavicle, your collarbone, or in your jugular vein. But that doesn't mean you do it. You may want to, you may wish you could, but you don't do it because that's not what you're trained to do. Anyway, this to me was, this is like the clip of this whole experience, whether it's the woman shot trying to either escape or trying to hit the officer, whatever happened a couple weeks ago. I actually think she was trying to just get out of Dodge and go around him, and the car didn't turn right, and it went forward, And in the moment, what's interesting is I can understand the anger of these people. I understand the anger of the people living in a neighborhood, and, all of a sudden you have, armed federal agents in your neighborhood, and it can be a little frightening for your kids. I get that. Totally get it. That doesn't mean you get involved in their activity. It's only going to frighten your children more. Do you think your children are any less frightened? Do you think you're under any less threat when you're out there protesting and throwing bottles at people and ramming their cars? Do you really think that you're less threatened that way? Are you really creating more safety? the inability of people to see this from the officer's standpoint is just amazing to me. Now, Stephanie, there are some issues going around about the legality of this. The Minnesota officials are saying, hey, this is a Fourth Amendment right issue. This is a search, and these people shouldn't be entering homes and breaking down doors, which allegedly they're doing, I don't know, but entering homes without a judicial warrant. They're saying they have administrative warrants based on a 2025 Todd Lyons, who was the, I guess, the acting ICE director, but someone there, who said, well, we actually, administrative warrants, if they're deemed, if they're convicted, therefore they're deportable, and they've already had an order of deportation, we can do an administrative warrant. And apparently there's some legal question about that, whether that interpretation holds water or not. I understand that. I get it. But the officer on the street, that officer
is doing what he's told.
That's right.
Yeah, and I mean, immigration is like its own ball of wax, and there are special rules. So I don't purport to know the difference between an ICE administrative warrant and anything else. But I do think, I mean, obviously this is playing out in the courts. Minnesota is challenging all sorts of ICE actions and DHS stuff, and again, like that's where this should, if there is a question, that's where this should play out, right? Not, losing citizens or ICE or your fingertip as an ICE agent. Like that's not where we should be having this fight.
I'll never forget. I was years and years ago. I remember I got a call that a patient at St. Luke's Hospital in Chesterfield was in labor, had a couple of babies. I knew she was going to go quick. I was at church in South County, and I left church. It was during church hours. And I remember it was, icy. And so anyway, the way I ended up I went through a stop sign where there was no one anywhere at the stop sign, nowhere, because I wanted to get there to make the delivery. The bubbles go on. I get pulled over. I said, but officer, I'm trying to get there to deliver. There are people there that can deliver that baby, doctor, and whatever.
You're still required to follow the law.
Okay. You know what? I didn't say F you and pull a gun and try to run the officer over. I was respectful. I disagreed with them because I was not a danger, in my opinion, to anyone. There was no other car around except the officer in a parking lot.
Only a danger to yourself, Randy.
By going through a four-way with no one around on the church. No, but I disagreed terribly. But I didn't act out against the officer. That's the point. You can disagree, but you don't have to be disagreeable to the point of violence.
You can talk to President Pro Tim O'Loughlin about how she needs to file a bill that if you are on the way to a delivery, you can run a stop sign.
There you go. Especially when no one is at the stop sign. No one in sight. Back with more Wake Up when we come back.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
Wake Up Missouri on this chilly, frigid. I don't think we hit a record. I think they're, at least in the mid-Missouri area, I think the record was minus 13, and I think we got to minus 10, at least on my weather app. How about you, John? Did you hear any records were broken cold-wise this morning, early morning?
I did not. When I was coming in, it showed 4 below on my vehicle.
Yeah, mine was minus 10. Well,
wow.
the house thermometer, I don't know. Stephanie, what'd you get down to? Do you know?
I don't know.
Didn't look. It was just cold.
Tried to stay inside.
Just cold. Yeah.
It was freezing, and
maybe,
the feels like temperature was just miserable in the negatives.
Maybe our friend Tony Lupo's listening and would know what I had heard the record was minus 13. Maybe that was not accurate, and that we might be approaching that, but I don't think we did. So, Stephanie, I know that you are a lover of all things technological and hardware in the communications realm and in the gadgets. You've talked about it before. Everyone's waiting for this Apple created some kind of a wearable gadget or something, and now that's going to integrate with AI. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think a lot of folks in mid-Missouri are still using like ChatGPT, like Google, right? Like we're just logging on to our phones or our computers and asking it questions. The question is, when does the AI become just part of your everyday life? Now, obviously, it's built into your phone and built into some other devices. I was an early adopter. I've had the Meta glasses for a few years now. And when they first actually launched, they were really just like glorified AirPods because you can listen to music and take phone calls on them. And I like that. But they now have AI built in that you can, trigger it and ask it like, what is this building? Tell me more about this plant. Like, give me, like, what do you see? And it can kind of talk with you a little bit. I don't use them like that. Also, their sunglasses, I want to get the clear ones because, I can't really wear them indoors. It would be
You've
weird.
got the ones for snow skiing.
Oh, and yes. I video my kids when we're ice skating and snow skiing and stuff. That's really nice. Or at theme parks. But Apple has announced that they are talking about coming up with this wearable AI pin device. Now, you might have remembered there was a launch of a program, and I think we played the video on Wake Up. The company was called Humane. It's since been sold for basically pennies to, I think parts of it were sold off to HP. And people are like, that is freaky. And people didn't like it. But Apple and OpenAI are both in this new device race. So Apple's saying it's going to have an AI pin that you wear. It's going to be about 1.25 inches, similar to if you've got an AirTag.
Sounds
about
like
that
an AirTag.
Same size. Yeah. But maybe you wear it all day and it tells you how to be more. They haven't really announced what the features are, but I assume it could transcribe your meetings, talk to you about your schedule, maybe do something with fitness. I don't know.
Tell you haven't done your 10-minute burst of anti-cancer exercise in 24 hours.
I know.
Time to do something.
Yeah. So, but again, I think it has lots of implications for people like you and I, Randy, who have confidentiality provisions.
Yeah, that's true.
But OpenAI is also looking at something. They said maybe screenless, smartphone-sized, possibly wearable. People are speculating that OpenAI's will actually be AI earbuds.
Whoa.
Which Apple already has AirPods, but they're not AI enabled. So
how far off is the chip like the dog gets at the vet, right?
Who knows?
Very close.
Larry Barron's on energy coming up in 5.
I'm as here as I can be. Good morning.
Good morning. So we're hearing about, of course, there's some power distribution problems with lines down. Stephanie's been talking about her friends and family down in the Nashville area. My daughter and her husband and family were on pins and needles there in Clarksville. They're on the Tennessee-Kentucky border, and a lot of ice, so they're not out of the woods yet, but thus far they have power. But there's not only distribution problems, but there's capacity problems as well, which we're not used to hearing about in winter.
We're really not, but it is happening. You know, we saw an alert go out of the weekend from our friends, and it gets kind of technical, and I try not to make things technical, but, you know, the country is divided up into sections where we get our electricity from. Missouri is what's called the MISO section, MISO, and they put out an alert saying, please don't use all the electricity you can because we're trying to keep the grid stable. And lo and behold, we need some more energy. And so try to, you know, really conserve. It wasn't an emergency type situation. It just meant that the energy that they were using was higher than what they expected. And so they were trying to move energy in between sections and a whole bunch of balancing acts that happens behind the scenes there. But it all points to we were using more energy that they expected we would use, and it could have turned into a problem.
Yeah, Columbia residents had the same thing. They had the same pleading that went out as well, which raises the question. I mean, is this just a matter of, hey, we can't have enough energy all the time and overbuild just for the rare times when we have this demand? Or is there truly some kind of a fundamental, I like to say, I want affordable, accessible, and abundant energy? Is there an abundance problem?
There is. There absolutely is. Not just where we live, but across the country as well. And I'll tell you from my point of view, and a lot of folks probably won't say it, but the fact of the matter is they were expecting, and a lot of places across the country yesterday were expecting that during the day the wind and the sun would pick up, and they underperformed yesterday. So they ramped down an expected amount of oil and natural gas and coal energy, and then, oh my gosh, the wind and the solar didn't show up like it should. So they had to ramp it back up. And I can tell you right now, the lights are being kept on in Missouri by coal, nuclear, and natural gas. That is what is getting the job done right now, if you look at the real-time grid monitors. And so those are the sources that, have been under fire for the last, 4+ years of the last administration. And thankfully, they're not under fire anymore, but it does take time to turn that ship around.
Yeah, Randy was talking about how a lot of Tennessee is powered by nuclear. And I know the governor on his State of the State had said that he has a new executive order out about nuclear energy. You see that as one big opportunity for Missouri?
Yeah, absolutely. Missouri is potential to be energy rich. I know there's not a ton of oil. I know there's not a ton of coal. But the fact of the matter is we sit in the middle of a whole lot of transmission where we could help out there. We sit in the middle of possibly having some pipelines to move energy across the country. And yes, nuclear is absolutely a place where, Missouri could lead and does. I mean, I didn't mention it there, but just throughout the year, Missouri gets about 10% of its power baseline from nuclear, and that's another source that shows up when you need it. And so those folks don't get the day off so that we can continue to have light and electricity, and in a lot of cases heat as well. So absolutely, there are places that we could be expanding here in Missouri.
Larry, is there a fix in the short term? We hear that nuclear, 10 years to build a second reactor at the Callaway plant, and the coal plants, a lot of them are offline. Is there a short-term fix?
Yeah, it's a great question, John. And the short answer is yes, but it's not a great one. What the Trump administration has done is they've looked at coal, natural gas, and yes, in some cases, nuclear plants that are, on the verge of shutting down or maybe not operating at full capacity and said, we need to, A, not shut them down, and B, ramp them up. But you're absolutely right. The regulatory environment is not friendly to getting things done. And so they have tried to grease the wheels a whole lot with that, but we do it right here in the United States, and doing it right sometimes takes time. And the urgency, it's kind of like the old proverb, the best time to have done this would have been 5-10 years ago. The second best time is to start doing it right now, because we are only going to need more energy, not just for weather events like this, but just for everyday electrical needs.
Well, and yeah, it's not only an abundance and, adequate capacity issue, it's an affordability issue too, right? I mean, because these things, you see some states where energy costs are reportedly up 25-30% in just a year or two. It's been crazy. Talking with Larry Behrens from Power of the Future. Larry, what do you think about the one of the listeners has texted us and said, the problem with the nuclear things are when we build those reactors, they cost tens of millions of dollars, and if something goes wrong, then it could bankrupt, an energy company. I mean, I don't know. Is that a plausible argument against it?
No, it's not an argument against it, because that's a true argument for anything. I mean, we have a utility here in Missouri that has raised rates on us 2 times in the last 4 years, and they want to spend tens of millions on solar and windmills, and you're telling me that those can't be subjected to the same issues as any other source of power. So the bottom line is any source of power is going to come with the possibility that it may not work in a tough weather event. But what do? You try to be redundant, right? And so right now we just need to build to have our needs much less be redundant. But redundancy is something that's needed absolutely in the future. And so I would argue nuclear needs to be on the table. Everything needs to be on the table, because we're only going to need more and more power.
Larry, what's the chance that in this legislative session, enough groundwork could be done? Because I understand there's a lot. I mean, when we have these discussions, you've said it. I think the governor has said. Many people have said it. Missouri can do what Missouri can do to try to really make a very nice for a power company to put in a nuclear. But there's a lot of federal restrictions, right? So, I mean, there's only so much that Missouri can do. But what can they do so that then if Donald Trump and Lee Zeldin can get their deregulatory scheme together, maybe things could happen quicker than they would otherwise. What does Missouri need to do this legislative session?
John, it's a great question, because the short answer is act now. I would argue that the federal environment for getting new electricity on the grid is never going to be lower than it is for the next 3 years. The Trump administration has recognized the issue. I mean, last summer, the United States in a single day used more electricity. We set a new record for more electricity. And yeah, that was all of us running our air conditioners. And so we know that even without any new power, our demand is going to continue to grow, even without adding AI to it. And so the fact of the matter is we need more base load power, and we need it right now. And so the legislature needs to be looking at what can we be doing to expand the options we have. Maybe take a look at if there are, facilities that have been closed down. There is a measure of how closed down are they? Can they be rebuilt and spun up and retrofitted? I don't know the answer to that question, but it is something that needs to have some urgency to it, because as we can see, and as folks are experiencing, when power goes out, especially in the winter, it is a life and death situation.
On the consumption side, is there legislation in some places, or should there be, where when there is a peak demand, that AI, you get the notice on your Gemini or your Chat GPT, sorry, we're having to slow down our data centers now because critical needs need to be met?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. And I don't think this is happening here in Missouri, but if you look across the country, the AI data centers are having what's called behind the metering payment. And so what they do is they go to, let's say, a nuclear facility, and they say, hey, listen, we guarantee we're going to buy X amount of your energy as long as you just sell it to us directly. Don't put it on the grid, just sell it to us directly. That way they have a secure price, but then that limits what goes out to the grid to you and me and what we need. And so absolutely, they need to be looking at those pay behind the meter deals so that residents are not, getting stuck out when the power is absolutely needed. And they also need to be looking at it from an affordability schedule. Why is this large corporation, a Google, a Microsoft, or someone allowed to go make a special deal when us, the consumers who paid to build out the grid, are not allowed to do that? And so there are definitely some things that need to be looked at in both of those arenas.
I think I would remind you, Randy, that those data centers are powering things like the computers at the hospital, the technology for your first responders. It's what powers the rest of folks to be able to do the essential services. But let's talk about pricing a little bit, because I think that's a big concern. You were talking about, now is the time. But I think what we're hearing from Missourians, the governor wants to cut the state income tax. People are already complaining about their electricity prices. How do we balance the need for new generation and also the price? Because ultimately what we know is generally that gets passed on to us.
You're absolutely right. And it's a really excellent way of looking at it, because when you look at the fact that we have had 2 rate increases here in Missouri within the last, I think since 2023, we've had 2 pretty double-digit rate increases on us. So that should be enough to get new infrastructure going, but it should be infrastructure that is lasting. When I say lasting, I'm talking about more than 20 or 25 years. And it also needs to be going into regular power lines and hardening the redundancy of it. It's fantastic that some Missouri residents have buried cables, so it's not as susceptible to ice, but some of them don't. And we need to be looking at what are those opportunities to work just on the basic infrastructure. I know it's an unsexy answer, but that is what is keeping us warm and alive right now. It's the workers who are doing it and sending the powers down the line that, we have the luxury of taking for granted, but it doesn't happen by accident. It happens through a lot of work, and we need to refocus on those things that are working.
Well, and Derek on the text line brings up a good point. He said, hey, just don't forget that the people in 2012 voted for a renewable energy standard. I know there are provisions or bills pending right now that might revise those renewable energy standards. I think he agrees with you on the policy side, but says, hey, we're kind of stuck with some of this stuff.
Wow, that's a great point. I wish I had a million of him. It's exactly right, and I'll show you some fun, fuzzy math. In Missouri's renewable portfolio standard, if you create a watt of energy, it actually counts as 1.25 watts. It's just a math change that they say so that they can meet that renewable. 1 equals 1.25 when it comes to quote-unquote renewables. That's written in the law, but he's absolutely right. That should be repealed. There should be a mandate that relies on, first, reliability, second, affordability, and that is it. That is the measure that we should be putting for our electricity.
Yeah, that sounds like Nancy Pelosi's, hey, when the government spends $1, it means $3 to the economy. The government never created wealth. It only sucks it away from the rest of us, right?
That's right.
Hey, Larry, thanks for helping us unpack this. I thought we were going to have a segment on healthy eating when you started talking about miso, that fermented soybean product. I know you're a Renaissance guy, but I mean, okay. Well, he brought it around.
I don't make up the acronyms. I don't. You guys stay warm.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Larry. Larry Behrens, Power of the Future. All right. When we come back, what do you got, John?
With a visit on the horizon, how about an AI groundhog?
Oh, that's right. That is coming up. All right. Let's talk about it when we come back on Wake Up Missouri.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
And that would be all, except for this.
Well, PETA's nothing if not helpful. The group sent a letter to Punxsutawney Groundhog Club President Tom Dunkel the other day offering to donate a state-of-the-art 3D groundhog projection, a hologram, for the big event coming up February 2nd. Let Phil and his family retire. Pixelated pop stars are headlining concerts. Long-departed celebrities are attending conventions. So why not put that technology to good use on a hologram that lets Phil hibernate in peace? According to Ingrid Newkirk, the founder of PETA, she says, give Gobbler's Knob a glow-up with a phantom prognosticator. Every year, this terrified little animal is subjected to loud announcers, noisy crowds, and Bill Murray, we might add. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro responded with a post on X featuring a "Don't Tread on Me" flag, but instead of a coiled snake, it had a guy holding up a groundhog. So now here we go with new data centers powered by nuclear, just so PETA can have AI-generated groundhogs.
Okay, now I'm seeing producer Drake raising an objection here. Producer Drake?
That groundhog lives better than any of us ever could dream. This is ridiculous. And, you know, when I raised chickens in my dorm my freshman year, everyone thought it was inhumane. Those things lived better than I did. They only drank from bottled water. They'd only, get the best food. I mean, those chickens lived life the best in peace. I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
I think the Punxsutawney groundhogs are pampered like you can't imagine.
I just think, can you imagine the folks who give $100 to PETA a year, and then you read stories like this, their positions just keep getting more and more and more unreasonable. I like to tell the story about how in high school they decided they were going to raise money for a charity by feeding someone lobster for lunch. And they got a live lobster when you could go get them in the tank, and everyone was donating money, and they were going to raffle them off, and then they were going to let you cook them and eat them for lunch. And man, that flew up the red flags for PETA. They sent a letter to the school threatening us, and the whole thing, God forbid you want to raise some money for charity and eat a lobster.
Did it get squashed?
I think we just told them to pound sand.
Okay, well, that's good.
This was also way back when, though. I mean, I'm old now, but
wow.
I mean, this is where your money's going.
Yeah, you got to get your priorities together, huh?
Sheesh.
So, do you guys know about the conspiracy theory behind what PETA is and why they're so radical?
I haven't heard.
So, this is just a conspiracy theory, but
we love a good conspiracy theory.
They say PETA is so extreme in all of this. They're actually funded by meat plants and all of that to make. They're funded by them to make animal activists seem crazy.
Oh, so it's a reverse psychology ploy.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I'm here for that. Have you seen the latest thing amongst millennials and Gen Z is you have to have a conspiracy theory night where you give a 5-minute PowerPoint on your favorite conspiracy? This is on my list for my conspiracy theory presentation.
The deal on this is, and I think it was a major network news story not that long ago, that PETA has actually bought stock in Smithfield and Tyson and all those, not controlling stock, but enough to be a stockholder.
To have a seat at the table. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have to tell you, I still am amazed at the volume of commercials I see for pet food that looks like what you would feed your family. I mean, it looks like the stuff you might bring to lunch. That's what people must be spending on that. And what I haven't had a chance to do is I haven't been able to talk to a veterinarian about whether is it really better for your animal. I mean, really chow versus the buffet. I'm I'm thinking old Roy versus the buffet. What's best? With the salad buffet for your animal. I don't know.
I think they'd probably be better off with the buffet than probably old Roy. But
well, old Roy.
you might think about the little higher price brands.
That's affordable, abundant, and accessible energy for your pooch. When we come back, we talk with Senate President Pro Tem Cindy O'Loughlin about the session. It's in session now. Well, it will be today, maybe.
Stephanie Bell, the Zimmer News Team.
And go hit the ground hard and relentlessly.
And now introducing your host, Randy Tobler.
To balance the budget. Simply put, the days of excusing budgetary decision with fund balances and so-called surpluses are simply over. State government has to return to how budgets looked before COVID-19.
Well, that was Governor Mike Kehoe in his State of the State address just a couple of weeks ago. And that's going to be one of the big topics we wrestle with. And we're glad that Senator Cindy O'Loughlin's joining us because she's going to be either refereeing or maybe participating in that wrestling match. I'm not sure which. She joins us this morning from, are you in Jefferson City or in the cold Northeast?
I'm in the cold Northeast for the moment.
All right. Well, I know you'll be down very shortly in the Capitol. So that the governor laid down the gauntlet. I know you've talked about that before, Senator O'Loughlin, and of course, as the Senate President Pro Tem, a lot of weight on your shoulders to try to wrestle this budget. How's that going to work out?
Well, I mean, it isn't like this was a big shock and we didn't see it coming. We've talked really for the last 3 or 4 years about the fact that, the federal government has kind of poured money out over the COVID debacle, is what I would call it. And we knew it would come to an end, and it's coming to an end. So, what was a $30 or $35 billion budget kind of ballooned up to over $50 billion. So, we talk really constantly about what the priorities are. In my case, I feel like we have to prioritize what matters the most. And everybody might give you their own version of what that is, but for me, it's stabilizing families, having effective education, and an infrastructure that actually works. Those 3 things really are the priorities.
Let's talk about that infrastructure because you have sounded off about solar energy, and I know we just played a clip from Governor Kehoe's State of the State, and he also mentioned Senator Searpoy's update to the Missouri's renewable energy standard. I know that was something that just came up in our interview with Larry Behrens of Power of the Future that, hey, the people passed a renewable energy standard. Is it time to update that? And what do we do about solar?
It is time to update it. If you go back to that, it was a ballot measure. It was largely funded by solar and wind interests. That's how these things work. And people are told this is something this is a locally supported measure. It's really not. It's special interest. Nevertheless, it passed. I mean, if you ask people, do you think we should have a certain amount of our energy supplied through clean energy? Of course, people are going to say yes. What they don't understand is the trade-off. So what we now have is basically legislation or a mandate in place in the Constitution that says we have to have so much power provided through clean energy, and they define that as solar, wind, and hydro, I believe. So time to update that. It should include nuclear and gas. And that percentage actually has been met. It's already been met. It should be kept at that level because one of the other things that will happen is as you get more power requests and you start providing more power, then, of course, the percentage goes up, the amount that the percentage equates to. So we kind of need to take a look at that, and I know Searpoy has a bill regarding that. I have a bill that says solar needs to be regulated in the state of Missouri. At the current time, it isn't. And there are it seems to me, there are solar salesmen on every corner, and basically they're racing to get solar installed before the federal incentives disappear entirely because President Trump has cut back on those. The state also offers some incentives. I think that needs to be looked at, but the most important thing is that we stop some of the abuses that are happening. What happens is solar companies come in, they talk to county commissioners. Oftentimes, these solar companies are backed by billionaire interests and kind of just roll over the county commissioners and give them information that is not validated by any reliable third party. And next thing you know, you have a bunch of prime farmland covered with solar panels. And within the next 10 years, a lot of those will be defunct. There's no, to my knowledge, landfills that take solar panels. So I feel like the rural counties are sort of under attack, and I think somebody kind of needs to take a look at that. I think it should be DNR mainly. And so my bill, basically says we need to stop this solar invasion until we have some sort of regulatory framework.
Yeah, there's no doubt the experience in California reflects that. What do we do with those spent panels? So you're definitely on target there. Senate President Pro Tem Cindy O'Loughlin joins us on Wake Up this morning, talking budget and energy and those pesky Democrats.
Senator, talk to us about health care reform at the Capitol and the topic that gets Randy riled up every time, and that's pharmacy benefit managers.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think I said before, the pharmacy benefit management idea was that they would help companies monitor drug usage by employees and thus hold down health care costs. But really, what's happened is they have become gigantic monopolies in the healthcare field. They often own the pharmacies. Some of them own banks. They own insurance companies. So, they have a closed circle. And what happens is the competition gets driven out, and we end up with a situation where, they tell you what you can get, and you better like it.
Now, we got a big decision out of the Missouri Supreme Court last week that strikes down a bill that you passed last session that would allow the secretary to rewrite ballot titles before the court ultimately rewrites. And then also it had a provision in there about the Attorney General's appeal authority. Is there an effort? Do you think there are a discussion already happening about whether or not you can just repass some of those provisions?
Well, there's certainly a discussion about the Supreme Court ruling, and this is something that I brought up last year. It seems to me that the Supreme Court represents progressive interest, and if you look at a lot of the big issues that come along, we pass something in the legislature, and somehow they always manage to end up on the other side of it and basically nullify what we have passed. So they ruled Senate Bill 22, this latest decision. They ruled the bill unconstitutional on a technicality. But really, I think the purpose of the ruling is to keep left-wing judges in the Western District in charge of writing ballot language that's favorable to left-wing causes. The problem that we have is judges are selected by other lawyers and judges rather than, and it's called the court plan, rather than being elected. And, I brought this up last year. I'm going to bring it up again this year. You're fighting lots and lots and lots of powerful interests, and, it's an uphill battle. But it's just this kind of thing that makes me determined to bring it up and talk about it and point out to the people that we are not being well served.
We do have to ask you before we let you go. It wasn't 24 hours or more, a little bit more, after the governor's breakfast when Stephanie was pointing out, and very frequently during that time, and everyone responded positively that we talked to at that breakfast. The governor, everyone, about what a nice event that is and how people like to reset the tone, right, Steph?
Yeah.
And
it was one
and
of
yet
unity.
it just seemed like within 24, 36 hours, well, all of a sudden the Democrats were drawing a line in the sand and they don't want to approve any of the judges' appointees. It seems like it's going to be contentious again, no?
I think the Democrats all throughout the break have been told, you've got to stand up to the Republicans. They used the PQ last session. We can't let that happen. The reality is the previous question is an offset to the filibuster. And if you filibuster enough, long enough, and you stop action from happening, eventually, then your choice is the other side is going to use the PQ. And that's really kind of what happened last year. They know it. We know it. We have 24 members. They have 10. We try to look for common ground, but I think they've really been encouraged to, kind of stand up for themselves and show that their views need to be taken into consideration. Well, I would tell you their views are taken into consideration, and we don't employ that method until we've tried everything we can think of to work with them. So right now, going into the third week of session, the only thing they're doing is keeping us from talking about things that really do matter. These appointees by the governor are largely all working on a volunteer basis. So hopefully they sit down and we move on to important things like property taxes, which, by the way, the worst abuses are in Democrat-controlled counties.
So are you talking to them? Do you know what they want, what it's going to take for them to sit down so you can move on?
Well, we are talking to them, but they do have a little bit of an issue on their side. They had a leadership challenge. It's not really clear entirely who the leader is, and I'm not celebrating that fact. When you have a split faction of 10 members, it's hard for us to go to whoever is supposedly in charge and say, what can we do here? How can we work this out? Because you might get one opinion from one person, but then you get another opinion from another person. And, then that makes it where it's very difficult to find the answer.
Yeah. Well, I know that I have personally witnessed you gather many different opinions in the healthcare space from different sides. And I think that's probably the secret sauce. And we hope that you'll be cooking up some good stuff in the Senate for us. Senator Cindy O'Loughlin, thank you very much for joining us, and Godspeed as you make it down to the Capitol and continue on with the mission. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. There she is. She's got a tough row to hoe with some obstinate Democrats. And they're feeling their oats nationally and on the state scene. Morning Bell coming up in a few.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
down at 0.58%. The NASDAQ and the S&P were both up. NASDAQ up 0.28%. S&P holding pretty steady at positive 0.03%. As we look at the sectors, Friday we saw financials and industrials and health down, while consumer staples, consumer discretionary, and materials were amongst the gainers. As we look at the futures, we've got a mixed bag, but everything kind of holding pretty steady this morning. It's a big week this week, Randy, for the economy. We've got 4 of the Magnificent 7 companies reporting this week. That's Meta, Microsoft, Tesla, and Apple. We've also got tax season opening today.
Ooh.
It's not a feel-good Friday, so I can talk about tax season. 164 million individual returns are expected. And, of course, we're going to see some of the impacts of what the big, beautiful bill. New credits and deductions are available for older people, for car buyers, for tip recipients, and overtime workers. Of course, that tax deadline coming April 15th. The Fed is meeting this week, too, on Wednesday. They are expected to hold rates steady after 3 consecutive cuts. Well, that's really sad. Because if you're trying to buy a house, it's still pretty difficult. And Fox Business is now reporting that there is a new trend among home buyers. The average, you have any idea what the median monthly housing payment is?
Including interest and principal interest and mortgage and insurance? Yeah. I don't know, $2,000, $2,500.
$2,400. That
wow.
So for first-time home buyers, for young people, It is not pretty. And what we're seeing is the median age for first-time buyers hit a record high of 40 years old, and that's up from 38 in 2024. So people are getting creative, and they're saying there's this new trend called co-buying, where 2 people or groups of people buy a home together that are non-romantically connected. Either friends or family members. Strategists are saying, hey, you need to carefully vet these agreements and make sure, you're committing to the right thing when you're, not in a romantic relationship. But actually, first-time home buyers, 25% of them are single women, 10% are single men, and only 50% are married couples. And that's changed pretty substantially over time. I think amongst first-time home buyers, it is... it's a lot of single women.
This co-buying without some kind of a cemented relationship seems to me to be maybe exposing to some future financial treachery.
But I think people are trying to get creative because also, paying $1,800 in rent until you're 40 isn't a very good investment for most people, right? So if you want to try to get some equity and get into a home, what are your other options at this point?
Yeah, you're right. No, I guess desperate times call for desperate measures, right?
That's for sure. Yeah, 1 in 4 home purchases made by single women in 2024.
Yeah.
Do you see what the gold numbers are today?
Oh, my goodness.
They broke all-time records again.
I've been trying to get Randy to hand over that gold tooth all morning.
Was it like $4,500?
$5,100.
Oh, no.
Per ounce.
Wow.
Holy cow. Well, when we come back, we'll ask Drake, is he bucking the trend of what cognitive researchers are saying about his generation? Maybe a quiz is in the offing. We'll see. Stay tuned. Well, before we talk about cognition and our youth and how they're doing, we're going to take a little detour to just mention that it's being announced that Tom Homan is going to be going to Minnesota and Minneapolis. Donald Trump says he's going to send him there. You know, in a little clip from last week, Trump said, ICE has made some mistakes. We'll see. I don't think anyone claims that anyone doing their job is perfect. You've been perfect doing your job all the time, every time, forever, as long as you've been doing it. Come on, if you say yes, you're either a liar or you haven't been doing your job very long. Right?
No, I'm pretty
Everyone
good.
makes mistakes.
I don't know. I'm pretty perfect at my job. I don't think I've ever made a mistake.
Which is a perfect lead-in to my story. Behold, Dr. Jared Horvath, a teacher turned cognitive neuroscientist. Here he is.
Since we've been standardizing and measuring cognitive development since the late 1800s, every generation has outperformed their parents. And that's exactly what we want. We want sharper kids. And the reason for this largely has been school. Each generation spends more time in school. We use school to develop our cognition. Congratulations, you see your correlation. Until Gen Z. Gen Z is the first generation in modern history to underperform us on basically every cognitive measure we have, from basic attention to memory to literacy to numeracy to executive functioning to even general IQ, even though they go to more school than we did. So why? What happened? What happened around 2010 that decoupled schooling from cognitive development?
This guy was at a committee hearing talking about this, where he was joined by teachers, by neuroscientists, by various experts in the field, saying, what has happened? How come Drake and his fellow congeners in their generation just don't have the same smarts that Stephanie and John and, yes, even Peter have? What's the story? Oh, Peter's out there scowling at me. I don't know. I hope I can come on the air tomorrow. Why is it that even though they're spending more time in school, this generation is not? Drake, you have any suspicions before I unleash the answer?
I have two things to say.
Why are you dumber than your mother is the question here.
I think that this is...
Because he's a male.
Oh, no, there we go.
So I think this study is flawed in some way, because there's no way that millennials are smarter than Gen Z.
Excuse you?
Some millennials are the dumbest people I've ever met. And I know some dumb people in my generation,
Rude.
but you guys take the cake.
Boys and girls?
Yeah, I'm not sexist.
Gender not specific. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. They're just stupider than all get out. But I do have to say, as someone in Gen Z, and a lot of people in my generation missed out on their first year and a half, 2 years of high school because of COVID.
Oh. Well,
so, I think that has a big part to play.
Interesting thought. But this includes, he's looked at this over longer times than even, after COVID. So, but remember, he says IQ. Remember how we talked about how IQ, we've always thought it's just basically a genetic, inborn, congenital thing. Well, it probably is more. It has to do with if you've gone to the Learning Center or the Learning Center, right?
According to the AI, you can change your IQ.
Okay, so
Slightly.
here is what he says might be at play. In fact, he believes it is at play.
Appears to be the tools we are using within schools to drive that learning. Across 80 countries, as Gene was just saying, if you look at the data, once countries adopt digital technology widely in schools, performance goes down significantly, to the point where kids who use computers about 5 hours per day in school for learning purposes will score over 2/3 of a standard deviation less than kids who rarely or never touch tech at school.
And he's talking about executive function. That's judgment. That's discernment. He's talking about memory, about attention span. I can understand the attention span thing. I get that. This is the generation and the one before it, which became so engrossed in video games and just the constant oncoming and the distraction. But executive function is what makes the difference between countries failing to survive and thrive or not. The difference between a business thriving and surviving or not. The difference between a family and marital relations and everything else. It's discernment, right? It's executive function. It's judgment. Apparently that metric is suffering as well.
I go back to what Drake said, half jokingly, about being his generation missing the year or year and a half, 2 years of high school, the in-person stuff. And I know Steph can even relate to it when her kids were out of school.
Yeah, I am not a great teacher, so my kids struggled, I think, when I was in charge of trying to keep them on task. But Denmark has a solution.
Yes.
And they're saying that for the 2025-26 school year, no cell phones in school, which Missouri did last year, right? Phones down. What is it? Phones down at the bell. Bell to bell. No phones. Denmark also removed tablets, laptops, and computers from classrooms. You have to use a physical textbook, workbooks, and writing assignments. That's what I grew up on. That's why I'm so smart. Worksheets.
Yeah, what they've done away with is any kind of. They've done away with. They're back to books and workbooks and writing assignments.
It's so easy to blame computers. So then you go from kindergarten to 12th grade and you're not using a computer every day, and then they drop you into the workplace where how many screens do we have going right now between all of us?
But the difference is
27.
But you were brought up in an environment where I think you were exposed to more than just computers, right? That's the point. If computer is used in a responsibly trained, differently trained manner without the distraction of what defines computer learning, things might be better.
I mean, at least Denmark's approach is consistent, I think, in that like they're going all not like, what do you call that? Non-digital.
I love it.
But I mean, I get frustrated in that we pass this whole ban on cell phones, and then the minute my kid walks in the door, you hand him a computer. It's like, what are we doing here?
Good point. But you mentioned when we were talking about energy, and by the way, if you miss any one of our segments, you can catch the best of, which is sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes an hour and 5 minutes on the podcast.
It's rarely over 3 with you, Randy.
Okay, the best of Stephanie, John, and Drake usually lasts about 45 minutes.
Go into your favorite podcasting app, search Wake Up Missouri.
Yeah, search Wake Up Missouri. You can do that. And if you want to watch the whole show, you can go back and look at the archive on Facebook, right? It's all
or
there.
YouTube. Yep.
Yeah, or YouTube. Okay. You were talking about, we were talking about energy and the giant sucking sound that AI data centers drive. And you said, well, what about hospitals?
About that. You were talking about
that. No, but then you said, but what about hospitals, right? And I was talking about that, and you said, but if they throttle down on the output of energy and throttle down the AI usage of it, how would your hospital run? Very well, thank you. I remember when people who were brought up without paper charts and without taking a history rather than cloning it from someone else's history on the digital, which you're not supposed to do, but everyone does, because you have these expansive, ungodly, for a little nosebleed, you got a mile-long chart. At any rate, when my hospital ran down on power, oh my God, you'd have thought that the meteor was coming. It was the end of civilization. Oh my God. I'm like, we're going to take a history. We're going to take care of patients. You don't necessarily, can you take care of patients better with the proper use of time? But you can take care of people.
But I think, look at Winter Storm Fern over the weekend, and look at what we do. I mean, people rely on one of us to be available, that if the weather goes bad, they can turn on a radio and hear the weather reporting.
Yeah.
You want to know where we get a lot of the weather reporting? John, do you look at your phone or your computer to find out the latest forecast?
Yeah, and we kind of joke about that. We say, hey, we're breaking in on the air. Well, Mom and Dad are already looking at the digital color weather radar and the list of the school closings, but we've got the immediate angle.
Yeah, and what what we do is really important to make sure that people know, can they get places safely? But we rely on technology, right? And again, we've got how many screens
that's true.
Up here?
But I guess what I'm saying is do we have too much of a good thing that is maybe wanted but not needed? In the hospital, you need to do surgery, so you have a generator and you fuel an OR. You do this or that for emergencies. But do we need all of the technology, all of the expense, all of the regulation that goes around with it? I'm just not sure. There's a point at which I think technology can be counterproductive. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, look.
I'm looking.
Oh, very funny. No, I mean, I counted 13 screens, and I think that what we do is a little specified with technology. I mean, we're broadcasting on our app to stream, where you have 2 YouTube streams with cameras, and all of our radio station is ran off of a computer. Well, multiple computers. But also with our special weather reporting, we get a lot of our firsthand accounts of what's happening on the ground from people calling in.
Who are using phones.
Who are using technology.
And back in the day when there were ham radio operators and shortwave listeners, you got your stuff through radio and through amateur radio. I mean, that they would give you boots on the ground, at certain defined ham frequencies, and they could give you reports.
Look, I think it's easy right now to just blame computers.
I'm not
We've there for a while we were blaming, all the world's violence is based on video games because humans naturally don't want to take the heat for anything. And so, it's the video game's fault. Now, the reason we're stupid is computers' fault. No, we had computers when I was growing up, and we're way smarter than Gen Z. So I think,
Danny says we were in the ER when power went out. ER emergency power kicked on. Medical care was okay, but new nurses couldn't manually fill out medical forms with a pencil.
Yeah, I remember back when Capital Region in Jefferson City, 21 or 22.
Yeah.
They had the exact same thing. We had the medical director on air with us because they had a multi-day computer crash, and he said he went to his files, got out the hard copy of the patient information forms, and he said his younger entry-level clerical types couldn't figure it out.
Well, think about banking. I mean, we've had power outages and technology cell tower issues, and we had restaurants in Jefferson City say, sorry, unless you've got cash, we can't do anything because everyone wants to tap and pay. Think about your own banking. How often are you writing a check, or how often are you just using your computer to transfer money? I mean, again, when we're talking about what has to sit behind all these tools that we use every day, you're talking.
Would people be in less debt if we didn't have such easy credit and plastic, if you actually had to pay by cash?
Again, you're blaming the credit card for the fact that people are going into debt, and you're not wanting to blame people who are spending more than they make.
I'm not blaming.
You're pointing the finger.
I am discussing
these are all
the
human
environment
problems
in which people might be susceptible to spending more rather than less.
Again, this is blaming the gun, not blaming the person. And I think what we like to say is people shoot people, guns don't shoot people. And again, this is not the computer's problem. This is a human problem.
I think it is fair to say it is an adult problem. But our children don't yet have the discernment and wisdom of a Stephanie.
Then maybe they need an adult in their life. But do they need more government telling us that they can't use their cell phones in school? No.
Well,
I'm the parent.
That sounds, well, what are you going to do about kids that don't have adults in their life? Okay, that when we come back and wrap it up on Wake Up Missouri.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
Time of the show when we bring you some leftovers from our pile o' prep. What do you got, Steph?
Apparently, lots of folks are microdosing mushrooms, psilocybin.
Yep.
There's a new RAND survey that talked to folks about their use of psychedelic substances, and among U.S. adults who reported using each substance in the past year, they estimated 69% microdosed psilocybin. So I think that's 69% of people using psychedelics. That's interesting.
90% of those are in Minneapolis?
Microdosing is different than like tripping. Apparently, you take a small dose and you're not like hallucinating. I mean, my knowledge about magic mushrooms is pretty thin.
Stephanie shares with us her psilocybin experience
but I will
on Wake
say,
Up Missouri.
There is there's bills pending in the Missouri State Legislature that would allow for a regulatory framework for people to use psilocybin therapeutically. So we might hear more about magic mushrooms going forward. You can potentially do it legally.
So you can microdose on your GLP-1, and then you can microdose on your psilocybin, and you can microdose on everything. Yeah.
A St. Louis area state representative who introduced legislation several years ago trying to open up psilocybin to be used especially in veterans' PTSD.
Right.
Yeah.
Therapy. I don't think it went anywhere, though.
There's some pretty good work done under supervision with some serious psychedelic induction for serious mental illness. I mean, that's happened. John, what do you have?
The suspect in the killing of a Herman police officer and the critically wounding of another has been found guilty. Kenneth Simpson was accused in the killing of Sergeant Mason Griffith, and Adam Sullentrip, the other officer who was wounded and survived. Sentencing phase is next. State attorneys asking for the death penalty.
Yikes.
He was convicted on Friday.
We're getting more news out. Of course, it was a big sports weekend.
Yeah.
I loved the buzzer beaters of the Mizzou basketball game. I and Drake, I think, are done with football. But Kansas City, Drake says, whoa. The Business Journal in Kansas City, though, is giving us new estimates about the World Cup, which is coming up this summer. They say that Kansas City is going to see 650,000 unique visitors, more than the population of Kansas City, Missouri, during the World Cup's 5 weeks in June and July. And I have already been chatting with some friends in Kansas City, and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about taking an extended vacation and renting my house out with the prices I'm seeing for folks coming to town.
You know, they're even talking about the overflow hotel rooms coming to mid-Missouri.
Oh, yes, they are. Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, folks from like Europe and whatever else, like traveling 2 hours isn't really a big deal. So they're saying, that we're expecting folks in mid-Missouri.
Do you think people from Europe may boycott America because they're angry at Trump and his NATO and that stance or not?
There might be a few, but this is a cup.
Yeah, their love for soccer outweighs just about anything else.
Okay, so soccer love outweighs TDS in Europe.
For the most part. Most people, yes.
But you hear some murmurs of folks in Europe that are not happy at all with Donald Trump and the way he's, quote, leveraging.
Have you ever talked to anyone in Europe who likes Donald Trump? Good luck.
Well, that's true. Good point.
Good luck.
Yeah, good point. I saw some unfortunate news out of, for what it's worth, this is a site called the Visual Capitalist, and I don't know, the survey, it's on the healthiest states. Guess where Missouri is on the healthiest state list? 39th. Ouch. 39th. I guess we're not doing a good enough job on make Missouri healthy again. We have to do more on that, right? And it turns out that a lot of the unhealthiness is like south of us in Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky. And they say it has to do with food poverty and sedentary lifestyles. I'm not sure it's food poverty unless you connect food poverty with a lot of foods that just are calorie rich and nutrition poor. I mean, it does cost a little more to eat healthier. There's no doubt about it. That's something the RFK hopes to change. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on things going up in Minneapolis. Of course, any fallout from the weather in your neighborhood and beyond. Tomorrow on Wake Up Missouri. I hope you'll join us then.
Bye.